So Matt Damon returns to the role of the amnesiac former CIA assassin, teaming with a brand new director on a sequel that deviates extremely far from the original Robert Ludlum novel. Well, let's get into all the details and insights on the Bourne Supremacy. Haunted by nightmares and memories of his former life as a CIA assassin, Jason Bourne has settled in Goa, India alongside Marie, trying to reassemble the pieces of his past while trying to find a comfortable future together. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Germany, a CIA operation headed up by Deputy Director Pamela Landy attempts to acquire files concerning a late Russian politician, Vladimir Nevsky, who was reportedly killed by his wife in a murder-suicide 7 years ago in the same city. The files are to expose a mole within the agency, as well as a theft of $20 million in CIA funds. However, Russian Security Service agent Karl blows the power, kills those in the exchange, and steals the files. He also leaves behind a planted fingerprint to implicate Jason Bourne in the crime. Later, Karl travels to India to kill the man he just framed, but he is quickly spotted by Bourne, who signals Marie that they need to leave immediately. However, in their escape, Karl unloads a sniper rifle, killing Marie and plunging her and Bourne into the river, leading the assassin to believe that the former Treadstone operative is dead. Yet Jason survives the crash and plots to hunt down those who he believes are responsible, not knowing the Treadstone program was shut down 2 years ago. However, with Landy digging up the dirt on Treadstone and believing Bourne to be the one who derailed their operation, both sides gradually close in on one another. Landy and Section Chief Ward Abbott are sent to Berlin, bringing former Treadstone support technician Nikki Parsons along, who Bourne agrees to meet with, only for both sides to learn that the stories don't match up. As Jason's memories rattle back together, he realizes that he was responsible for the Nevsky murder as his first operation with Conklin. He was forced to improvise when the politician's wife showed up unexpectedly and staged it as a murder-suicide at the Hotel Brecker, leaving their young daughter as an orphan. When the truth comes too close to being exposed, Ward Abbott kills Conklin's former aide Danny Zorn for questioning the evidence that was planted against Bourne. Soon thereafter, Jason tape records Abbott implicating himself in the Nevsky murders and the framing of Bourne in Berlin, the Russian business mogul and co-conspirator Yuri Gregkov. Abbott later takes his own life, and the tape is left for Landy, tying off the investigation and clearing Bourne's name. However, the way to Bourne's past leads him to Moscow, where not only will he attempt to atone for the horrors of his past, but also avenge the death of Marie, and Karl is thrown hot on his trail. The two men collided on the streets of Moscow in a brutal encounter, where only one of them will be able to survive. So the Bourne Supremacy saw its original theatrical debut on July 23, 2004, and grossed over $52.5 million on its opening weekend alone, ahead of a $290 million worldwide box office take off of a $75 million budget, making it a smash success for Universal Pictures, even more so than the Bourne Identity 2 years prior, which grossed about $214 million off of a roughly $60 million budget. And one particular asset to this success is the change in directors here, because Doug Liman directed the Bourne Identity, but something I was not privy to when I did my review of the film several years ago is the fact that there are a lot of production problems behind the scenes of that entire thing, mainly because Doug Liman kept doing things that kept changing the script every so often and making last-minute decisions about different things to reshoot things, and a lot of things are just like not sitting well with Universal. It created a lot of problems, ballooned the budget up several extra $1 million, and thinking the film was a fantastic film. It came out as a massive success, but it's something they really wanted to avoid getting entangled with on a sequel here. And so they kind of like, oh, Doug Liman will just give him an executive producer credit because he was probably contractually upgraded to something in the entire thing. But we moved on to Paul Greengrass here, British director, who had done a couple of films that really captured the eyes of producers here, and thought like this guy could really step into this thing, not being like an action-centric director, but someone who has a very strong stylistic approach to filmmaking. So they brought him in on the entire film, and they brought back screenwriter Tony Gilroy to adapt what little of the novel they kept in the entire thing, because as the original film from Doug Liman kind of deviated in certain ways from the original novel, you have to pick up from a different place than where the Ludlum novel picked up from for Bourne Supremacy. So in the novel, Jason Bourne is now David Webb again, his original name, and he's with Marie in America, and he's like teaching classes in Maine and stuff like that. And then there's an assassin going around posing as Jason Bourne, and so framing him is kind of the only little piece of something they kind of kept in the film from the original novel here. So you got another guy kind of going off and framing Jason Bourne for the killings, but at least in the film, the assassin kind of goes off to try and kill Bourne. And Marie doesn't die in the novel, she's still alive. But in this one, they definitely take a different swerve on different things. Just like, from this point onwards, there's basically nothing to do with the Ludlum novels in the films, pretty much whatsoever. So it's very thin type of stuff you can pick up on, but basically they don't resemble it whatsoever. But the very interesting type of thing is that very late into pre-production, the Bourne screenwriter Brian Helgeland, who had done LA Confidential, Mystic River, very, very fantastic films, to do a script rewrite, but they kind of brushed most of his script aside, but still kept a few elements in there because Gilroy's script had a section where Jason Bourne was locked up in a prison in India, working on an escape plan on the entire thing. So it kind of ate up a bit of a chunk of the entire film, and they kind of discarded that and took the elements from that part of the entire script from Helgeland's draft. And so the fact of the matter is, Helgeland's stuff wasn't used quite as much in terms of quantity and percentage of the entire film. So it was only Gilroy who got main script credit on the entire film here. So pretty much went on credit on Helgeland's regard, but still a fantastic screenwriter, added something in there, and Gilroy's also a fantastic screenwriter in his own right. An interesting type of thing is that how they actually shot the film, because most films get shot completely out of sequence in that regard, but they shot everything almost in reverse order in terms of where the locations landed in the chronology of the film. So all the stuff that happens at the beginning of the film in India was actually kind of the last stuff shot. So all the stuff like in Moscow and stuff like that in Berlin were kind of done much more towards the beginning of production. Kind of an interesting thing for the actors to kind of know their place in certain scenes, where you especially have Matt Damon going through a lot of different countries and different settings throughout the entire film, having to be very clear and concise about where the emotional arc of the character is and where he's going from beat to beat, and knowing that in kind of an odd sequence we're jumping around from different places. So having to play those scenes with Frank Potente very late to production, it's kind of an interesting type of thing to kind of project where the ideas of how the character reacts and how those events impact him without actually having shot those scenes yet. So certainly a lot of things could change over the course of production getting to that point, but Paul Greengrass very much kept the film very much on a great steady track throughout the entire film. There was really no complications whatsoever, aside from the very end of the film, because it was only a couple weeks before the film was due in theaters that he came up with a different ending to the entire film, because originally the film ends after you get the entire thing where Bourne goes off to see the Nevsky girl and has that entire confession scene. He kind of drops down unconscious in the snow and wakes up in sort of a U.S. military hospital. And you got the entire scene with Landy kind of telling him basically the same information, like real name's David Webb and stuff like that, but they kind of just leave him locked up in the entire hospital room and walk off and he escapes. It's not as good, it's nowhere near as good as the ending they actually got here when they reshot it. They had to borrow Matt Damon from the set of Ocean's 12. They come in for like a day to shoot this entire thing, but it worked out very well because I think it's a fantastic, smart, clever ending they have there where Bourne goes back to Manhattan and he has that phone call with Landy, and it's very much a great ending in that regard. It does get a little bit skewed when you get into Bourne Ultimatum, but whenever I get to that film, I'll talk to you about that in much more detail and how they reshot it, recontextualized the entire scene. But in regards to the entire film, Greengrass does a great job here. I know there's a lot of people who've kind of pegged him so much about the shaky cam type of trend that went on, but he does it right so much. He knows, he has a skill for it. A lot of people just shake the camera around and put it in random places and don't know how to construct the scene, how to edit the scene, how to visualize everything, get all the visual information put together throughout every single shot in a sequence. A lot of people just have no idea what they're doing. They just slop together. Greengrass knows what he's doing with this style, with this approach, how he wants to construct everything, get all the little pieces off in certain places, and have it very much like a point of view shot and whatnot. You can kind of see a lot of things directly through Bourne's perspective, how he's deconstructing the scene, how he's looking at different elements and reacting to certain things. We get all that stuff kind of put through his perspective in a lot of different cases in the entire film. And Greengrass is fantastic about it. And the cinematographer Oliver Wood, who shot Bourne Identity, who shot a lot of really great things, also did a fantastic job to adapt to that style here. So great things over the board here. And just the fact that Greengrass is much more sort of raw documentarian sort of approach, very much that kind of in the moment sensibility about the camera being sort of a character in the scene itself very much amplifies so much what the original films laid the groundwork for. This one delves deeper into harder emotions, harder edge type of qualities in the entire film. So it goes off on a very good track from the first film, very much follows up in a very organic type of fashion, but you definitely see this film is going grittier. Not grittier in a sort of a gimmicky type of way. It's very much focusing on the deeper aspects of the story here you're dealing with Bourne, uncovering further deeper secrets of his entire past here, confronting that, kind of dealing with all the fallout from Conklin, all these different things they kind of weave together in his own background that he kind of has to resolve for himself and have to delve in deeper about his entire sense of identity in that regard. So I think all the things that Greengrass brings to this thing very much enhances what you had from the first film and delves deeper into it, same as the screenplay is. And again, Matt Damon's fantastic. Just amazing work he does through the entire course of this film. And I like the fact that in this film, when you have the first film where he's kind of on the back heel the whole time, bewildered, trying to figure out exactly what's going on, having things go off where he just can't really comprehend what exactly he's kind of twisted up into. This one's much more proactive. He's much more of that aggressive character going after things, driving himself forward to go back against the people they think are trying to attack him, trying to kill him, killed Marie. All these different things, trying to get forward at the truth of it, but it's much more that aggressive, front-forward, proactive figure in the entire story here, and proves to be much more of a calculated methodology to his character. Just like you see, he's much more in control of the situation here. He can go off when he's trying to hunt down Landy, trying to figure out who she is, what her cog of this entire thing, trying to get the upper hand on the entire situation. You can see those skills playing out very nicely, how he kind of goes through all the stuff with the tourist book, trying to find all the hotels, call each one of them, trying to narrow down lists of exactly where she is, and trying to get all these little pieces forward where you can just track her down, follow her, be kind of a shadow to her and stuff like that. All these little things are very smart towards the elements of the character that we saw in the first one, but more the kind of dodging and weaving, sort of improvisational type of stuff he was trying to do back then to try to put the pieces together. Now he's still putting pieces together of a different mystery, but he's much more on the front end of the entire thing. I like that so much, and the fact is, everything that he has to bring the character of Jason Bourne through in the entire film comes up to that confession scene at the end of the film, just like once he's actually constructed all these fragmented pieces of his memory about this hit that happened in Berlin with Conklin and various other things, he's got to confront that. He has to resolve that for his own sake. What the sins and the crimes he had in the past when he was a different person, now he has to go off and like, I have to realize I did this stuff. And I have to take some kind of personal responsibility for it. And the only thing he can do is go up to that girl, that daughter, who lost both of her parents because of Bourne himself. Something. He's got to confront that. I like the fact that Bourne has to grapple with his own conscience. He has to resolve these things that he did in this previous life and have to push the things forward that he's learned on this journey when he goes back to Marie. He thought that this was Treadstone. All these people were responsible for her getting killed when it really wasn't. It was people off on the rogue elements, the fringe elements, the entire thing, with ulterior motives and stuff like that. He didn't really know the whole story. Now that he knows the story, knows who exactly is responsible, he has to push that forward. He has to go up to that Nesky girl and tell her, your mother didn't kill your father. I killed them. I'm responsible. Don't live with the entire guilt and the trauma of the fact that your mother killed your father, because that's not the truth. This is the truth of the matter. So you can live with a little less sense of trauma, a little less sense of guilt, a little less sense of weariness about your parents. You can reinstate the love you had for them and carry that forward. So it's just the smallest thing that Bourne can give back, the smallest thing he could possibly fix in the situation. He can't bring the lives back. He can't fix what's been done in the past, but he can fix this one thing. And if it helps him move forward in his life, in this new persona that he has, this new identity that he does have, it's a fantastic type of thing. And of course you got Franka Potente returning as Marie here, and despite her short screen time, she does make an impact here. She does create a counterbalance to the hauntedness of Jason Bourne here. All the things that he's played with the nightmares and all these different things, trying to piece together all this fractured memory he's got. She has that great understanding, that great compassion, the great patience she has with him. As you can kind of tell, they probably jumped around to a few different places at this point in time, and kind of settled here in India. And the fact is they've kind of grown together a little bit over a 2 years period. And the fact that you get all these little pieces when they're in the entire car chase, she's like, you don't have to do this. We don't have to run. You don't have to live like this. And she kind of bats it back and forth between them with just these little looks. I like this quality that she's trying to create a counterbalance to his fatalistic urgency. Even though he's correct in what his assessment is of the situation, she's like, you don't have to go off and try to bring the fight back to him or all that type of stuff. We can just try to slip off somewhere. She is a nice counterbalance. It does stick with him as the story goes on. He every so often thinks back to her and what she would want in the situations when he's up against Ward Abbott in those final moments between the two characters. It's like, I'm not going to kill you because you wouldn't want me to. I'm going to hold back that impulse because the better half of me still lives in his memory and still lives inside of him. I love that quality, and that she impacts the story whether she is alive or when she's tragically killed. That is made such a great nexus point and a sort of a catalyst for everything that goes on in the entire film, and still informs how Bourne goes along throughout the rest of the story here. I really like everything she brought to this character. She did a fantastic job. Unfortunate that her character left at this point in time, but they crafted a very, very, very good story that was centered around that incident and made a purpose for it overall throughout the course of the entire story here. And you get Joan Allen added in this whole thing. And the interesting type of thing, you've got Brian Cox, you've got Joan Allen, who both started Manhunter back in 1986 but never shared any scenes together. But now, of course, they get to do it in the Bourne Supremacy. And Joan Allen's fantastic. Really fantastic. I think she grew so much in the years since Manhunter, where she got a little bit of a role that I felt was a bit underwritten. You know, less of a focus on her character, not quite as well developed as a lot of the other characters were in the entire film, so she didn't get as much interesting things to work on. She's got it here. Absolutely. She has done a great service with the character of Pamela Landy. She is that kind of inverse of Conklin, because Conklin was a nut job. A real kind of sociopathic maniac to a certain degree. She's a consummate, straight up, clear-cut professional. I love the qualities that she has, this wonderful sense of command and authority that she brings to this character that you absolutely need, because you wouldn't believe 1 second that she is someone who would head up all this type of stuff in this investigation, all these different things, have the command of this stuff, if you didn't have an actress to step in the role and project that quality of the character so much on screen. She does a fantastic job. I love what she does here. And I like so much her perceptive intelligence, because she's such a character who follows her instincts, follows her intuition, that there's something deeper to unravel with this entire investigation. Something just doesn't quite fit together 100%. Something just feels like there's something else here that hasn't shown itself yet. Something with Bourne, something else with Nesky files. There's something that's slowly piecing itself together, and she's picking up on the clues as it's going along. And of course, dealing with Ward Abbott, who's trying to veer off the directions and stuff like that, because he's got things to hide that we don't yet know about in the entire film. But when you look back on the films, like, he's trying to poke and prod and kind of drive things off to different degrees, so she gets off the track of exposing him for certain things. I like the fact that Pamela Landy's that character who is a consummate professional, is constantly dogged to follow exactly what she knows needs to be followed through on. And I like the fact that as things go along and she learns more about Bourne, as you get the entire thing with the tape that Bourne got off of recording Abbott, and learns about the entire conspiracy behind what was happening here, finding a little bit more about Bourne the man instead of the stuff that's on the page and stuff she learned from Treadstone and Conklin, all these different things. She learns more about the man himself. I like the quality. There is that brighter tether to the CIA now, because before Conklin and all that type of stuff, it was sour as hell, because so much as smell you people, I'm coming at you with the wrath of God and stuff like that. Much different complexion on this whole thing. He's lost Marie, but he's kind of gained someone that's you can trust a little bit. It feels like someone is on the up and up, someone with an altruistic sensibility who feels like they'll be honest with him if there's anything else that comes up along the line. So I like that connection between the two characters there. It's very much a hopeful note when there's been a lot of darkness throughout the entire film. It's nice to have that entire bright point at the end of the film, especially with that brand new reshot ending. Really has out the end of the film in a very, very good way. And of course, Brian Cox. I mean, who doesn't know how good Brian Cox actually is? Again, from Manhunter up to Succession, the guy's spanned a fantastic legacy of performances over his entire career, and he's not done yet. And in this entire thing with Ward Abbott, he does a fantastic job, just electric performance. So much with everything he's doing. It's like, you can't be anything but your A game going up against Brian Cox in any acting scenario whatsoever, because he's going to drive you forward to do even better than what you are now. Better than maybe he's doing. He's trying to push you forward because he's just bringing so much of that intensity to this entire character here, because again, he's got this shiftiness about himself. He's kind of inherited all those deep, dark, dirty secrets that Conklin had buried in there, and he's got to clean them up, sweep them up under the rug, because he could be implicated in a lot of these different things and is on the verge of being exposed. So that's why he sets up all this type of stuff. And just like, it's a great character to see the progression as you have from a sequel that's a proper sequel that builds on what you had in the first film, develops it further, expands the horizons of the characters, and further deepens what happens to them. The consequences of what happened before roll into what you are now, and that's a fantastic thing for Abbott's character here, to see that before he's kind of washing his hands at the end of the film of identity there, and saying, oh, this thing's all brushed away and we're closing it off and washing our hands of it, but his hands aren't clean. And that's the entire thing with this story, bringing that to the forefront. And he's got this sort of skewed sort of justifications, like, I'm a patriot. It's like, I'll kill and die for my country, stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a dirty, shady game that he plays in that regard, but this one really gave him a lot more juice, a lot more meat to kind of sink himself into and create a much more fuller sort of story for his own character there. I really like what he did overall. And of course, Karl Urban. God damn, everyone loves Karl Urban, don't we? Lord of the Rings, Dread, Star Trek, now The Boys. The guy's created another great legacy of characters and performances in his own right. And it's great. See him in this type of like silent, stoic character of Gabriel. Great stuff. He's just got... They're kind of like not certain. Like, I'm not certain if he's going to take the role. I don't know if it's really what he would want to go for, because there's not much written on the page for him. But it's a great thing that if you don't have a lot of dialogue for the character, he brings a presence so much. The look of the character, how he carries himself, the demeanor he has, how he moves on screen. All these things create very much a mood, an intimidation factor for this character that very much makes an impact and penetrates through the entire screen. It does fantastic work. Just like every little thing he does. I like the fact that when he shows up in Goa, India, Bourne just picks him out a little bit. The car he's driving, the way he looks, the way he moves, he's just slightly out of place. I like the quality that the mannerism he has, the way he moves, the way he looks around, stuff like that. It all creates a very much a particular sensibility for that character. And he jumps into the action sequences, all this type of stuff, fantastically well. It just creates a really great character that doesn't need to have a lot on the page, but brings a lot in the performance on screen. It's so much so because he's a great performer, great actor, really just drove home a really solid villain to really despise. Great, great actor. I love all the people in this entire cast. Everyone does a fantastic job inside and out, thoroughly through this script, embodying these characters, and through the direction of Paul Greengrass, creates some very full, fleshed out, dimensional characters with a lot of things to really say for themselves. In return to score this entire film to excellent effect is composer John Powell, who continues on the great work and the themes and qualities brought forth from the Bourne identity into this film, sort of meshing of orchestral and sort of electronic elements, entire thing. Wonderful type of stuff. I like the sort of pulsating beat he has going on through the entire film, where kind of building up some urgency here and there, just kind of tip things off when you have a little bit of emotional moments here with some strings and some other things going on. And it's like a really nice work he does, just a smooth transition between all these different sounds and qualities through the entire score here. Of course, when he gets in the action sequences, a lot of great pounding percussive type of stuff, just like the end action sequence with the entire chase through Moscow. I like the fact that every so often the beat just kicks up more. It builds on top of things, just like these phases that builds up through the entire sequence. There's like the intensity ramps up every so often, further and further, as the entire thing just pumps up closer to the end of the whole thing. Just fantastic job, just wonderful type of score he puts together on the whole thing, and the action as well in the entire film. Like I've said, there are people going off and done this shaky cam thing ever since Greengrass kind of introduced it here in such a great fashion, because it's a massive blockbuster film. Really got a lot of attention for that, and it's like people just like didn't have his skill to put together the whole thing, because as you look through this entire thing, if you actually go back and watch the film, the cinematography is a lot better than memory serves. A lot of the criticism has kind of skewed it to a certain degree. When you actually watch it, even though there's a lot of stuff that's quick cut, But if you're watching intently, you're not sitting at home looking at your phone and not paying attention. If you're in the theater, watching this whole thing, it's like you're captivated by what's going on here. And even if they're very, very short shots, you get all the little details. The exact visual storytelling is all completely conveyed from one thing to the next. You take that end car chase sequence. Very particular type of thing. They put Bourne in a bright yellow taxi cab to distinguish him against all the other cars on the road. Then you put Karl in this big black boxy SUV that's completely different from everything else on the road. Very smart type of thing to really make sure they're distinguished elements through all the entire chaos you have going on with all the action. And everything goes off when you can just see a split second where you have Bourne doing the gear shift and his thing stepping on the pedal, stuff like that. Very particular exacting moments to convey exactly what's happening in every single piece of this entire puzzle here, to construct it so very well, know exactly what's happening without having to linger on the shots too much. You can maintain the kinetic energy without losing the geography of exactly what's happening in the scene. And geography is the most important thing in action. To know what the relationships are between where everyone is in the scene, between one another, what the actions are doing, what their goals and the targets are, all these different things going on. You have to convey that very clearly. And that's what a lot of these other filmmakers get wrong doing this style. They didn't examine what he was doing with the coverage, with the style of editing he was putting together to make sure what is being conveyed in every single shot, to make sure everything tells a story here, even if it's very, very quick, it's still there to register when you're paying attention to the actual film. The only thing I have a bit of a problem is when Bourne goes off and visits the other Treadstone operative in Munich. It's a good, well choreographed scene from fantastic fight choreographer and stunt coordinator Jeff Amata, a friend of the late Brandon Lee's. He worked on Brandon's film Rapid Fire. He's worked with Michael Mann, John Carpenter, a lot of other filmmakers. This guy's got about hundreds of credits over the last 40 years. One of the most prolific guys in the field. He worked on Bourne Identity, worked on this film as well, choreographed the entire sequence there. My only problem with it, wonderfully choreographed, but it's all backlit. And that's the one problem. You don't have people properly lit because you could kind of lose the identity of who's doing what in the sequence, because both guys are fairly similar sort of height, build type of stuff. You could really get them lost and they're kind of grappling around back to back and stuff like that here and there. It's a little hard to understand at some points in time, but I think when you got the ultimatum, Greengrass took a little of the criticisms into account and really adjusted things to a certain degree to have brighter lit scenes. You could see everyone much more clearly, the entire thing. This one's a little bit egregious on that end of certain things, but I think so much what you do with all these different things, from the car chase in India, the beginning of the whole thing, and all the little pieces here and there you have when Bourne's being chased around Berlin and stuff like that. All these things have a great sense of geography and visual storytelling to them that it very much takes a very keen eye to make sure that when you're trying to do this exact same style, that you follow exactly what he was doing here and follow a very pinpoint particular way of how he was conveying all this type of stuff. Certainly other films that he's done later on. I think there was a friend of mine who went on to see the other film that him and Matt Damon did later on, Green Zone, and some of the shaky cam stuff really started giving him a headache. So you can kind of see that maybe if you have a bit of a motion sickness type of thing, it might not quite do you very well in the whole thing. But for me, I feel like he did a very good job making a craft out of this style to convey that quality and the exacting nature of what you need to do with these action sequences to make sure you're not losing the story overall. And looking at the Bourne Supremacy overall, it's just like, I think it's really one of the best sequels out there. It really is one of the best sequels put together in general, because it does exactly what a sequel should do. Like I said earlier, you take what the first film established, and then you build on it, expand on it, and dig deeper into the characters, and it does all the things exactly right. There's not really a flaw I can put against the Bourne Supremacy, this film, because you put it all together very well. Like, again, the depth of the story here really pushes things forward. It gives more of a broader sense of the implications of what Bourne has done in the past, what he needs to grapple with now, what he has to resolve for his own self, and deal with other tragedies he has going on, being in the world that he is, and being tied to the things he was in the past. All comes back around to haunt him, but he has to confront them, not run away from them. Like all these different qualities, it wraps everything together very, very well. It's a really well-woven screenplay, even though you had one script draft from Tony Gilroy, then some other things brought in from Helgeran's script. but I think Paul Greengrass found the best qualities of both to mesh them together and find the best elements to create the most impactful story possible with the most substance it could possibly have. I think everything comes together extremely well, this whole thing. Again, the action sequences are just really intense. The car chase sequences, just like they have that visceral trauma. If anyone else has been in a real car wreck, they can tell you that feels extremely real, what they do. Not with just the visuals, but the audio in the entire film really captures that real insane reality of the entire thing. You can feel it, especially when you saw it in the theater, or if you listen to the DTS X track they put on the 4K Blu-ray. That thing's going to crunch you like living hell and make you feel every single impact so well. So Greengrass carves a really fantastic film here that really deserves a lot more discussion in that regard. In terms of like the best sequels ever, I think it definitely is one. A lot of people say they feel Identity is the best one. I think I was always impacted by Supremacy so much because I didn't see Identity until like maybe a month before this thing hit theaters, because I saw the trailers for Supremacy. It's like, damn, this thing looks really, really good. Let me check out the first one. Let me go out and rent it. And then I bought the DVD. And I saw this thing twice in the theater. I remember exactly the theater I sat in, seeing it the first time. It was fantastic. It was an absolutely fantastic film. Still is to this day. Nearly 20 years on, it holds up extremely well. And since I got up to this one, I'll definitely probably get around to Ultimatum a lot sooner than I did to this one, considering it was about 3 years ago that I did Identity, but hopefully this one does really well for you guys, and you can share your thoughts about Bourne Supremacy down in the comments below, how you think it stacks up against Identity, what you like about it in comparison to that one, or maybe some things you don't quite like as much, but I think it's just, just an excellent film. So guys, thank you so much for always the likes, super things featured to contribute something directly to the channel here. Go to Patreon to contribute anything you want, to get access to the entire content we have here on the channel, the commentaries, the reviews, everything like that. And just your comments, likes, subscribes, all that type of stuff, sharing links around also helps extremely much. So guys, thank you so much for watching this whole thing, and thanks much. Take care. Bye bye.